Hello, everybody. This is gonna be a semi-heavy topic. So before we begin, let me reward you with about 30 seconds of my very happy cat that I just had on my table right now. See you after that. Well, hopefully you enjoyed my cat because I did. Very hard to record videos with him on the table though, so he's on the floor right now. I also have a tiny little candle because while I'm recording this, it is December 1st, and I can finally open my own advent calendar that I bought for myself, which is an advent calendar of tiny, teeny little candles, 24 of them in total. I am very pleased. It brings me great joy. Anyway, I will not tell you where this post is from because I had a big conversation with the moderators and they did see my point of view and it did get removed afterwards. Plus, I don't want to be bringing hatreds to specific places on the internet. So, because this post no longer exists, you can't just sleuth through the internet and figure out where it came from. And also, you can't bring hate to the person that wrote it, nor to the community that it appeared in. However, for about the 24 hours that it was up, it has garnered a significant amount of upvotes and quite a few comments that were even agreeing with the points that I'm going to emphasize today, which makes this very, at the very least to me, important topic to address. We're gonna start this video by talking about the paradox of tolerance, mostly because what I'm gonna be talking about is not the paradox of tolerance. And I'm gonna kind of prove that. So, the paradox of tolerance is when you are tolerant of intolerant ideas, and intolerant ideas eventually end up taking over the country that you're in, and then it reduces the tolerance for everyone. My cats are having a huge fight in the background. Great. And that is why you don't tolerate intolerance. However, there is a difference between tolerating intolerance and just turning ideas that don't personally align with you into some sort of phobias, even though they're clearly not. So, first of all, this post was red flags to avoid in content creation. For occult spaces in particular, that's why spirituality is in the title. And once again, this post has a considerable amount of upvotes and a lot of people that agree with this kind of line of thinking. So, red flags in content creation. An intense emphasis on divine feminine, the womanly nature, sacred womb. It can indicate homophobia or transphobia. Divine feminine has a counterpart of divine masculine, and I find it quite odd that this person isn't targeting both genders equally. They're targeting specifically woman centric parts, which is already, I want to really say, very much aligned with misogynism and misogynist thinking. But let's break it down. If there is a woman out there that's very much in tune with nature, very much into family rearing, and is able to do so and wants to see her own internal organs as sacred, feels aligned with the mother nature, that is not harming you in any way. You might not identify as female or male. You might identify as female but not have a womb. You might identify as male but be unable to produce seed. Yeah, that happens. Sucks. But also, people that identify female that do have a womb happen to exist. And if they want to view the functionality of their organs as sacred, that does not hurt you. It does not affect you in any way. It's not against gay relations. Gay women can get pregnant like any other women. It is also not transphobic because some born women also don't have functioning internal organs or might not have children regardless they have functioning internal organs or don't. It happens. That's just the way of things. It's like saying that considering human species to be bipedal is attacking the disabled community. What's even worse is that this is going to be a bit controversial, but targeting women is easier than targeting men. Even psychologically, targeting women is easier than targeting men. There aren't many things that my mother and me agreed upon, but she wouldn't necessarily consider a woman entirely making her own decisions until she's maybe about 30 or so. That's mostly because women end up coming into adulthood most often as people pleasers. They will want to please their parents, so some of them will go kind of harmful directions. And yes, it is a decision that they're making, and they're full adult, so they can make these decisions. But in the end, they're making that decision because the environment that they were brought up in made them think that that decision was correct and right. And nothing can protect you against mistakes in life, but such people-pleasing attitudes end up making it so that about the first 5 to 7 years of adulthood, you probably put yourself through hell because you are attempting to be everything that you're not necessarily are yourself, but that you believe is right because that was imparted upon you. And it doesn't matter who's doing the imparting. It can be their family, it can be their friends, it can be the widespread cultural notions. So if you give an early adulthood sensitive person that wants to do what is right, a kid that just approached college age or is going to university for the first time, and they have a strong sense of justice and they want to do what is right, you tell them that considering your own bodily organs to be sacred is wrong, using gendered language is wrong, connecting with divine feminine is wrong, talking about themselves or seeing themselves in a highly feminine manner is wrong. They're gonna internalize that. They are gonna suppress the way that they represent themselves on purpose in order to please you. And that might please you for a while, but do remember that as there is a reason why my mother thought that women counted as like full adults at the age of 30. It's because you can't live your life forever like that. You can't live your life in a way that doesn't make you happy. So eventually you start to let go of those notions. You start going, wait a minute, I've been lied to. This doesn't fit. It's not the right direction for me. And that's when the pendulum can swing the other way really drastically. Because the actual intolerant people, the ones that are actually, homophobic and transphobic, they now have an ally in this poor, confused person that was never these things to begin with. But you have decided that the things that they were doing that were hurting you in no way were wrong, and labeled them with entirely unrelated labels. And there were quite a few comments on this point going, oh yeah, my coven entirely avoids any kind of gendered words. we see using gendered words as just completely wrong. Well, sorry to break it to you, but it doesn't matter what you identify as. Human reproduction does not change. We can't really have two babies yet. That means that no matter how you see yourself, you came from a womb that was, and you were kind of produced from a seed and an egg. And they came together and they grew in a womb. So no matter how you twist it, womb will always have life-giving properties. Not everybody has that. Not everybody needs to give life. Not everybody needs to have children. But that is how children are made. Unless we see life as a positive thing in general, we tend to see life-giving properties to be also a positive. So don't confuse poor college girl by telling her that perceiving her own body parts as sacred is wrong. That's not gonna have the effect that you think it's gonna have. It's really gonna bite you in an arse in probably a decade, and that poor person will just go through more turmoil than they needed to go through. And once again, this is something that's going to be quite unpopular because I am portraying women as being the weaker sex. I'm not trying to be mean. I am a woman myself. Despite how much I pressed to go into my own direction, I was very headstrong very early on. I traveled countries to live with the person that I wanted to live. I was still trying to be a good girl based on what the expectations were placed upon me from my family. I knew that I had to go to university because they told me that I had to. I wanted not to, but they told me that I had to. So I went to university. I tried to get a 9-to-5 office job, despite the fact that my health wouldn't have allowed me to work in that for a long time, because my mother was a strong, independent woman that had a 9-to-5 office job that raised me alone. She was very much against marriage. She was very much against any kind of binding contract like that. And she very much wanted me to make something of myself in the career sense. It did not help that my grandfather is a professor and my grandmother worked as a programmer for a while. On my father's side, my grandmother is a professor. Well, my grandfather used to teach technology. He's retired now. And she used to teach law. And what I was trying to say is that everybody in my family in the last 2 generations, they were highly educated people. And they were working people. And the same expectation befell upon me. And I couldn't live up to it. The years when I was most suicidal is when I was trying to live up to an expectation that with my body and my health was actually impossible from the get-go. And it took me a very long time to work through that. It also took me a very long time to cut contact with my mother because she was very mean to me as a person and has done quite unacceptable things like arrive here uninvited and decide to replace all my furniture because she did not like my furniture. She wanted me to have IKEA furniture, which did not make me happy. It was of worse quality. It looked more uniform, but it was definitely of worse quality. I let her do that. There were other ways that she has influenced me as a person until I learned to stand up for myself. So despite being a headstrong person, despite being seeking to do what I want, I was still quite compromising the true me, and it took years of living as an adult to realize that I am doing that and that is very much not working. And that is a story that repeats with women a lot more often than it does with men, because men tend to challenge authority more. They tend to start even more headstrong than strong women, and they're more likely to say F you even to people that they like and that they admire because they believe something differently than women are. So targeting women in particular in anything like this is, in my personal opinion, a different row of insidiousness. It's, I hate using this word, but it is evil. And I know that the person that wrote this post, they did not have bad intentions. None of this comes from bad intentions. But when you see something like this, I would like you to stop and think of whether what was being described is actually hurting anybody or not. Because if it's not hurting anyone, then leave the people be, please. Or if it's hurting someone just by the idea of this idea existing because they can't quite fit the mold. For example, a person that really wanted to have children but can't due to a medical condition, feeling triggered by the word womb, or seeing, or feeling even worse by the idea of a sacred womb. That is something to bring to a therapist. That's not something to get other people to stop using the wording. If we're gonna go that far, we would need to heavily self-censor. We would need to make sure that, for example, clowns or spiders are not talked about because those are very popular fears. We would need to make sure that all of our world is fairly beige because, well, you know, colorblind people might get headaches and eye strain from colors that they can't quite see very well. And the world it starts looking kind of weird, and access to accessibility is always good, but that doesn't mean that you need to throw out your red couch or that you should be demanded to never buy a red couch if you yourself are not colorblind. There are personal boundaries there, and those personal boundaries should not be being crossed. And when it comes to personal boundaries towards healthy self-expression, it honestly really infuriates me when it comes to attacking women engaging in healthy self-expression. That infuriates me even more. Let's move on to a different point. Similarly, any content that is made only for white cis Western viewers. It could be simple lack of awareness, but in certain cases it's bigotry. Here are 10 rituals that we got from our Viking ancestors. When people use our in that context, you can assume that what they're talking about is their own cultural and national demographic. That content creator is not talking to you in particular. It's the same if I go and listen to Brazilian beliefs and folklore, and the Brazilian uses the word our ancestors, our beliefs. I don't immediately believe that I am being included. This is quite a toxic attitude in a different way of the only way to avoid a person that would get upset as this and label you a bigot is if you then exclude cultural sharing and instead limit the kind of information that you share about your culture to your own language, which would honestly suck. If I wanted to make a video about Lithuanian pagan beliefs, I can do it fully in Lithuanian if I knew that me making a video about Lithuanian pagan beliefs and talking about my ancestry while using the word our while trying to talk directly to my countrymen would upset you. But here's the thing, all of the English people that just wanted to listen to someone else's culture would lose out because they can't speak Lithuanian. My best advice is, if you're gonna claim a belief, if you're gonna claim a spirituality or a culture as your own, please learn the language that it comes from, please learn the mythos, maybe even go to the place and live in there. And when somebody says our ancestors, and it doesn't include you because that is not your ancestors, please don't get offended because the same thing applies the other way around. Your ancestors are not the ancestors of the country that you're now in, and the language that you're now learning, and the culture that you're now exploring. It's a fairly simple concept, if you ask me. Technically, if we go far enough, we would be sharing, common ancestors, but we're not going that far. So your ancestors are your ancestors. My ancestors are my ancestors. We can both talk about them online in English because we have decided that this is the language that we use to communicate with one another without getting offended that our ancestors aren't shared and that we're all not included into the same one big pile of goop. Okay? Otherwise, I'll have to start excluding you even harder and making my videos in Lithuanian. Nulis problemų. Aš lengvai galiu gaminti tokią kalbą lietuviškai. Aš lengvai galiu kalbėti apie lietuviškus pagonių papročius lietuviškai. But my English subscribers would understand nothing of that. And my subscribers that don't speak Lithuanian, that also have English as their second language, would also understand nothing of that. And we're effectively now becoming isolationist and reducing cultural sharing, which benefits nobody. I hope I made my point clear. What I'm talking about is not tolerating the intolerant. What I'm talking about is tolerating things that should legitimately not hurt you and not mislabeling them just because you yourself don't fall into that group, and not censoring speeches and videos and other cultural sharing just because, once again, you don't fall into that exact category and that exact group. You now have the privilege of listening to a person that's native to a different country talk about their culture and their spirituality. You now have a privilege of adopting that cultural and spirituality as yours if you want to. You should not be upset that your ancestors aren't the same as that person's ancestors, or that when that person speaks, they're talking about their native group of people that are in their area. That is it's a fairly simple concept. Yet apparently it's really flying over heads of people. It's really mind-boggling how so many people, though mind you, this Reddit is 500,000 people strong. When I grabbed the picture, this post had 100 upvotes, which placed it in the hot page. It went up from there, and there were quite a few comments going, yeah, that is how the world is. It's quite concerning when a large amount of people are that closed-minded, and they're really really starting to pull back on the progress that has been made with diversity and inclusion and cultural sharing by becoming isolationist and by pushing their friends into becoming their enemies because they couldn't handle organ names. It's not something that you should be seeking. It shouldn't be widespread. And it shouldn't be this way. Take some time to introspect. The world doesn't have to revolve just around you, the same way that the world doesn't revolve just around me or anyone else in that matter. If you have personal issues, personal phobias, that doesn't mean that people that you don't know about on the internet will stop talking about clowns and spiders. You're free not to engage in that, but it is not a reasonable ask. I hope that I made myself clear, and I hope that I made myself clear enough for you to understand why such mentality is a very toxic one. And I hope that I can still be understood. Because to me, this is culture shock. This is not a way that the environment around me would ever act. And I don't understand why you would want the environment around you to act. I hope that this video was also calm and reasonable. Because I must say, things that limit people's ability to self-express, widespread censorship in any regard, and isolationism, it does upset me as a person. So yesterday I was boiling. I didn't engage in any content while I was boiling, but I was boiling nonetheless. I didn't want to make this video an angry one, because even the person that wrote it was a well-meaning person. It just shows that the road to hell can be paved with good intentions. There is another topic that I want to cover that is more in the tabletop sphere, and it is an approach to tabletops that is entirely new and alien to me, and frankly, not all that positive. So I don't know if I am uploading this video at like the end of the week, in the middle of the week, but you can expect 2 videos where effectively Mirta talks about the things that make her mad. I hope this doesn't upset you, and I don't make these videos while being in a mad headspace. I just try to make my point of view as clear as possible, and I hope that I have succeeded. Thank you for giving me attention for as long as you have. I mostly make gaming videos in here. Sometimes I will really go ham on occult subject as well. It's a channel of both. I had this channel for 14 years. I had it ever since I was 16. I would love for this channel to go somewhere. If it doesn't, it's okay. It's my desire. It's my wish. It's my dream, you could say, that this channel goes somewhere. But this channel in the end is ultimately an expression of me. It is an expression of things that I cared about in my 14 years of life ever since I made this channel. Because I made it when I was 16, or just about nearly 16, so it would be over 14 years now. Meaning that it is a bit of a mishmash. I am aware. I am sorry if these two topics are not going hand in hand very well. I'm trying to bring them as close together as I can by theming this channel to focus more on occult and spooky and otherwise dark themed games that kind of can also go with my appearance, and occult then slots in a lot nicer. Take a look around. If you like what you see, then please subscribe. If you don't, then thank you for just giving me your time of day to listen to this whole video. I hope I'm gonna see you again, and toodaloo for now.